north along the East Coast, and reimagining back to school in the good old outdoors. Next on PBS NewsHour Weekend.
PBS NewsHour Weekend is made possible by Sue and Edgar Wachenheim III, the Anderson Family Fund, Bernard and Denise Schwartz, the Cheryl and Philip Milstein family, Barbara Hope Zuckerberg, Charles Rosenblum. We try to live in the moment to not miss what's right in front of us. At Mutual of America, we believe taking care of tomorrow can help you make the most of today. Mutual of America Financial Group, retirement services and investments.
For 25 years, Consumer Cellular has been offering no-contract wireless plans designed to help people do more of what they like. Our U.S.-based customer service team can help find a plan that fits you. To learn more, visit consumercellular.tv.
Additional support has been provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. Politicians debated what should be included in another round of coronavirus economic relief legislation today, as tens of millions of Americans began a new month without emergency unemployment aid and worry about evictions, food aid, and health care. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin argued the additional federal unemployment insurance of $600 per week, which expired on Friday, needs to be reduced to encourage people to go back to work.
We want to fix the issue where in some cases people are overpaid, and we want to make sure there's the right incentives. But again, let me just emphasize, we put on the table a proposal. Let's extend it for 1 week at the same rate while we negotiate so we don't hurt the American public.
So you do think it is a disincentive to find a job if you have that extra $600?
There's no question in certain cases where we're paying people more to work, stay home than to work, that's created issues in the entire economy.
A number of recent studies have shown the payment is not keeping people from returning to work. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi blamed President Trump for the lapsed unemployment benefit and rejected the Republican proposal to reduce it by 2/3.
We have been for the $600. They have a $200 proposal, which does not meet the needs of America's working families. And it's a condescension, quite frankly, because they're saying really don't need it. They're just staying home because they make more money at $600.
Staff members worked on details today on Capitol Hill. Negotiations among White House and Democratic leaders are set to resume tomorrow. In Portland, Oregon last night, police officials declared a protest outside a police station unlawful after they said bottles were thrown. It was the first violence after 2 days of largely peaceful demonstrations with no arrests. At the federal courthouse in downtown Portland, protests were peaceful. That site was the focus of nightly, often violent confrontations with federal officers deployed to protect it. On Thursday, the Trump administration and state officials agreed to reduce the presence of federal agents. Since then, protests have continued, but with a minimal law enforcement presence. There was some fallout yesterday from the controversial deployment of federal officers to Portland. A senior official at the Department of Homeland Security was removed from his job following reports that he compiled intelligence on journalists and protesters in Portland. Brian Murphy was the acting undersecretary for intelligence and analysis. He was reassigned on Friday. The Washington Post first reported the intelligence gathering on Thursday, and acting Homeland Security Secretary Chad Wolf has asked the department's inspector general to investigate. The coronavirus continues to spread in the United States, with California now the first state to have more than 500,000 confirmed infections. Across the U.S., there were more than 58,000 new cases reported yesterday. Compared to 2 weeks ago, daily new infections are down about 5% on average, according to data compiled by the New York Times. There are now more than 4.6 million infections and nearly 155,000 deaths. The number of deaths is expected to rise sharply as that count lags behind reported infections. A new projection from the Centers for Disease Control says the death toll in the United States could rise by as much as 30,000 in the next few weeks. Globally, resurgences of the virus are forcing some places to reimpose restrictions. Authorities in the Australian state of Victoria declared a state of disaster today and imposed a nighttime curfew after a spike of new coronavirus infections. And in India, which has been an epicenter of the pandemic, the Interior Minister, Amit Shah, announced today that he has tested positive for the virus and is hospitalized. There was no word on when he last met with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. India reported more than 54,000 new infections yesterday, just short of a daily record set on Friday. Tropical storm Isaias is slowly moving along Florida's east coast today, bringing rain, storm surges, and high winds. The storm lost its hurricane status late Saturday afternoon, but officials are still warning residents to prepare for power outages and flooding. The storm track shows it may make landfall tonight or tomorrow and continue to move north over the next several days. Coastal flooding and high wind warnings are in effect from Florida through the Carolinas. In California, a growing wildfire has prompted more than 7,000 evacuations in Riverside County east of Los Angeles. As of this afternoon, the Apple Fire has burned some 20,000 acres and was 0% contained, according to the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection. The Riverside County Fire Department tweeted that one home and 2 outbuildings were destroyed. The fire began Friday evening and grew quickly overnight Saturday, forcing additional evacuations. No injuries were reported. A representative for the American Red Cross said COVID-19 protocols are in place for evacuees. The cause of the blaze remains under investigation. NASA astronauts Robert Behnken and Douglas Hurley splashed down in the Gulf of Mexico this afternoon on board the SpaceX capsule that carried them to the International Space Station and back. With parachutes deployed, the capsule landed in waters offshore from Pensacola, Florida.
Splashdown.
It was the first splashdown return from space in 45 years. During re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere, the spacecraft had to slow down from its orbital speed of 17,500 miles per hour to just 15 miles per hour when it landed. Rescue ships and helicopters took the astronauts to a recovery ship with a 40-person medical team on board. Behnken and Hurley will be flown to Houston after checkups. The two spent 63 days in space. The mission marks the first time a private company has launched people into orbit, and it is also the first time NASA astronauts have lifted off from the U.S. in nearly a decade. For more on the SpaceX mission and other national and international news, visit pbs.org/newshour. There are still many questions over if and how school districts across the country might be able to welcome students back to classrooms this fall. Many are contemplating teaching remotely. At the same time, the American Academy of Pediatrics strongly advocates for the goal of having students physically present in school. One coalition in California believes they can offer a solution. NewsHour Weekend's Christopher Booker has more.
As every parent in America knows, there are no easy answers when it comes to whether their children can or should return to school in just a few weeks. Even if schools are allowed to open, the majority of America's schools will only be able to fit an estimated 60% of their enrolled students in their usual classrooms under the required social distancing measures, according to the National Council on School Facilities. But there are those who argue schools are looking at their space problem in the wrong way.
We're asking schools to consider space as something that they actually have infinite access to if they just walk out their door.
Associate Director for Learning and Teaching at UC Berkeley's Lawrence Hall of Science, Craig Strang is part of the team that helps shape the science curriculum used by an estimated 1 in 4 American students. But since March, Strang has been working to convince school districts from California to Maine to take their classrooms outside.
Getting kids outdoors, not for 10 minutes, not for a half an hour, but for whole school days whenever possible, really needs to be taken into consideration.
As a co-founder of the National COVID-19 Outdoor Learning Initiative, the all-volunteer effort of hundreds of education experts has been working to develop a guiding framework for how schools and districts can reopen in-person classes safely using outdoor spaces.
It's not a new idea. It's not a new solution. It's really a different way of thinking by current school leaders.
It's not a new idea. At the beginning of the 20th century, schools across the country were held outside to protect students against tuberculosis, and then later the Spanish flu. Classes were held on front porches, on rooftops, and even ferry boats throughout the entire school year.
Schools have a lot of
potential to use their grounds that they're not yet tapping.
Sharon Danks is the co-founder of the initiative. Trained in environmental city planning and landscape architecture, Danks has spent the past 2 decades running Green Schoolyards America, an organization that works with schools to transform their grounds into green spaces.
So in this case, in the COVID context, we think they have plenty of space outside that can augment the inside space when they're looking to spread kids out for social distancing.
Consisting of educators, epidemiologists, landscape architects, city planners, the group is offering districts a how-to manual, free of charge, on everything from curriculum development to infrastructure planning.
It should be the first option, and it is super simple. You can bring your existing furniture outside tomorrow. You can buy picnic tables, and they'll be here next week. And the goal is to be able to help a school district that says, great, let's do this. And then they say, how do we do this? And so it'll be the how-to manual online, and it does have individual modules in it that will help with thinking about different ways to sit outside and be comfortable in different climates, cost estimates, helping them think through where they're going to store supplies outside, how they, the logistics of the infrastructure, and also some of the modeling of the staffing that would go with it.
How do you answer the question about weather? Obviously it rains, it gets hot, it snows. Depending on where you are in the country, the weather is very different.
Definitely. And I think it's possible in every climate to do the work that we're suggesting. We have great examples from Canada and from Northern Scandinavia where they do go outside in the winter. And actually in Chicago in the pandemic in 1918, the tuberculosis and Spanish flu pandemics, they did go outside even there all winter in some schools.
In addition to outdoor plans and designs, the initiative encourages districts to couple their outdoor classes with a curriculum that boosts students' environmental literacy, an effort that Craig Strang says could be bolstered by the consortium of outdoor educators currently idled by the pandemic.
So these outdoor science and environmental educators work in organizations like nature centers and residential outdoor schools where school groups go for a whole week of very intensive, immersive natural history and nature-based science education. And they're really expert at connecting children with nature.
In April, the Lawrence Hall of Science conducted a survey of nearly 1,000 outdoor organizations across the country.
The 1,000 organizations that responded to our survey estimated that they were going to lay off or furlough over 30,000 employees. And these are passionate, trained up, skilled outdoor educators who could immediately be redeployed to work with small groups of students in socially distanced, safe contexts, in face-to-face learning experiences, really high-quality learning experiences outdoors.
What's preventing this group from being deployed?
I think that federal support in the form of relief funds, specifically targeting the outdoor science and environmental ed community with encouragements and incentives to partner with school districts, would make a huge difference. The same thing could be happening at the state level within state departments of education, and it would certainly help if the U.S. Department of Education made a statement that utilizing outdoor spaces is the key to getting our kids back to school.
Obviously, districts are not built identically, and districts are not funded identically. Where and how does inequity play into this conversation and this effort?
This idea of taking kids outdoors in every school is an opportunity to start chipping away at some of those historical inequities. There are local parks within 10 minutes, 15 minutes walk of many city schools, and many city schoolyards can be very easily and inexpensively greened with a very small amount of infrastructure support.
We need to consider all options, and this one is a time-tested option. We know it works. The barrier is not the difficulty of setup. It's adults just thinking slightly differently. We know that everybody has had huge amounts of stress, both parents and kids, in this time. And we think that the outdoor environment is the best place to bring kids back because it does have a therapeutic, calming, stress-reducing benefit. And so we want to be able to provide that effect for kids returning.
A study by the Kaiser Family Foundation found that nearly 1.5 million teachers in the U.S. are at greater risk of serious illness due to COVID-19. Recently, the American Federation of Teachers, the country's largest teachers union, announced that it would support any local chapters that strike due to their schools reopening without proper safety measures. 2 weeks ago, I spoke with the union's president, Randi Weingarten, for our sister program, Amanpour & Company. Here's an unaired portion of that interview where Weingarten addresses school safety concerns and what must be done to make teachers feel comfortable returning to the classroom. So at what point would you advise your union members not to go into school buildings, to continue to teach, but from home?
So look, most of the districts that we are working with are coming up with really smart strategies because we're working on the front end to try to assure that schools or education is both safe and we're meeting the needs of kids. If there are districts that are jeopardizing the health and safety of children and of teachers in defiance of what parents want, in defiance of what teachers want, then nothing is off the table. But right now, we're still trying to get it right. And so, that's why we've been, very much focused on how do we engage parents and teachers in these conversations? How do we follow the science, first in terms of community spread, spacing, resources, and how do we get the resources? As school districts get closer and closer to starting date, nothing will be off the table except one North Star, which is let's make sure we are not jeopardizing the health and safety of children and of educators.
Do you have an idea of how many of your members would fall into the high-risk categories?
Yes, about Kaiser Family Foundation actually projected that it's about 25%. 20% of teachers are over 55. We know that about 30% of principals are over 55. But, we know just like the rest of the population, lots of people have pre-existing conditions. The polling results that we got back that said, if it's safe, if we have these, physical distancing and masks and cleaning and ventilation with a reasonable accommodation for those who need it, 76% of my members said, yep, I want to make a difference in the lives of children. I know that it's in school is better than remote, and I'd be comfortable in that circumstance.
So finally, when does this end? I mean, we have epidemiologists saying that this virus will become endemic. It will be like influenza, it will circulate through the human population over time. How do we prepare for this? How do we make sure that teachers and students and everyone else has the confidence to walk back into school buildings?
So, I think that trust and science are going to be key. We're going to need to lift up examples of where it's safe. We're going to have to share that. We're going to need to hope that the scientists get to a vaccine as quickly as possible. There's lots of things that we can do in terms of reimagining our health system, our public health system, what education needs to be to meet the needs of individual children. So many people during this period of time have ensured that the country has been fed, the country has been protected, the country has been engaged. And so one of the things that in moments of darkness, that I really rely on is the essential good of working people in America. They want America to work. And I think that they are the ones who, if we do this step by step with safety very much key in our mind, embedded in our mind, then we can see a way of moving through this crisis and reaching and meeting the needs of our kids as we must do.
Randi Weingarten, President of the American Federation of Teachers, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Since the killing of George Floyd back in May, legislators and police departments have moved to ban the use of neck restraints, which has long been controversial. One of the country's largest law enforcement agencies, the Los Angeles Police Department, severely restricted the technique back in 1982 after the use of neck restraints by police caused a wave of deaths. Los Angeles cardiologist Dr. Richard Allen Williams recalls an unsettling phone call that ultimately contributed to the change in police policy. His story is part of the KCET series, I Was There.
My name is Dr. Richard Allen Williams. I'm a cardiologist, and I'm on the faculty at UCLA School of Medicine, where I've been for 45 years. I want to take you back to the year 1982, when I received a call from LA Police Chief Daryl Gates, which surprised me. Chief Gates was a very forceful and aggressive police chief. He actually established what one might think of as a militarized police department. So on weekends in particular, he would send 500 or 1,000 people into specific sites of LA, and the police would simply descend upon these people who were out in the street at night and start mass arrests, bring them in, and lock them up.
Aggressive doesn't mean the use of force. Aggressive means that we move into crime situations and deal with them.
I don't know where he got my number from, but in any event, he said, I'd like to discuss a very delicate medical matter with you. Chief Gates asked me if I could verify the fact, or according to him, the fact that African Americans were very susceptible to chokeholds because they had an anatomical defect in their necks. And so he was suggesting that blacks were not normal in regards to their neck anatomy, and that therefore it was their fault that they were dying, not the fault of the police. And he wanted to know if I would agree with him. And I told him, no, Chief Gates, I don't agree with that. I think that this is something that cannot defend. The real reason is that there were more chokeholds being applied to blacks. Over a period of a few months, 16 men who were taken into police custody died from chokeholds, and 12 of those were African American or black. There was a good deal of controversy in the city about this at that time. Well, there actually were two chokeholds. There was one that was called the bar hold, and then there was the carotid chokehold, which reduced the blood flow to the brain and caused the individual to pass out and die.
And when these holds are applied properly, it is our feeling that they are not life-threatening holds.
Ultimately, the LA Police Commission decided to eliminate all chokeholds in the city of Los Angeles. And that's where it is today. In California, there's an assembly bill which is pending right now. If that passes then and is signed, then the chokehold will no longer exist throughout California. But that's just one state. George Floyd died from a chokehold with a knee to his neck from the police. And there was also the case of Eric Garner in New York City in 2014, where the chokehold was applied. We are able to see racism live and up close, and this should propel us to do something definitive at this point, finally, to eradicate that. I think elimination of the chokehold is the first step in that process.
Finally tonight, Wilford Brimley has died. The actor, known for his distinctive mustache, appeared in movies such as Cocoon and The Natural, as well as several television shows.
Well, here's a bowl of steaming Quaker oatmeal.
For nearly 2 decades, he was the face for Quaker Oats commercials. He was also a spokesperson for diabetes, a disease he was diagnosed with in the late 70s. He died Saturday in Utah, where he had been hospitalized for a kidney ailment, according to his agent. Brimley was 85 years old. That's all for this edition of PBS NewsHour Weekend. For the latest news updates, visit pbs.org/newshour. I'm Hari Srinivasan. Thanks for watching. Stay healthy and have a good night.
PBS NewsHour Weekend is made possible by Sue and Edgar Wachenheim III, the Anderson Family Fund, Bernard and Denise Schwartz, the Cheryl and Philip Milstein family, Barbara Hope Zuckerberg, Charles Rosenblum. We try to live in the moment to not miss what's right in front of us. At Mutual of America, we believe taking care of tomorrow can help you make the most of today. Mutual of America Financial Group, retirement services and investments. Additional support has been provided by Consumer Cellular and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
You're watching PBS.